Hello and welcome to Why AI. Why AI is your go-to podcast for all things AI. I'm your host Harry Styles and I'm here to talk you through the exciting, sometimes daunting world of AI. I'll be talking to industry experts, teachers and enthusiasts about the different aspects of AI, from the myths to the real-life applications. So whether you're completely new to AI or a tech expert, there's something here for you. So hello and welcome to Why AI. We're just getting into it. So, what can you just give a bit of background about yourself and who you are essentially and what you do? And you're a teaching and learning specialist. You're also an author as well,
Yeah.
as you briefly just mentioned. So yeah, can you just give a bit of background to yourself?
Yeah, so my name's Sammy. I go by SJ as well. I currently work at Text Help as a teaching and learning specialist. Text Help do assistive technology, so they help people read and understand materials. I work with a maths product on the maths side of things because I was a maths teacher for many years. And then I became an EdTech specialist, and then I was an EdTech consultant for a couple of years as a freelancer, consulting nationally on colleges and schools and national projects and delivering CPD nationally for like big government contracts. And then I wrote the A to Z of EdTech this year, which is fundraising for my local hospice.
Amazing.
And the cover art is by my kids.
Yes, I saw on Twitter. That's brilliant. Yeah, I really like that.
And it's 26 pick up and put down chapters themed loosely around the alphabet. That's the only element of it, but it's 26 short blogs of the questions that I would ask about technology in the classroom, and I purposely don't touch on AI in the book because I don't think it's wise to future gaze too much.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, that sort of leads me on to, one of the most sort of, I guess you could say, pressing questions, and one of the most, I'm very interested to get your thoughts on it all, really. So I'll just sort of ask you the question of, do you think it's going to be a very long running thing? Do you think it's got do you think it's got legs essentially?
I think it's got legs if we can find a use for it. I think if you think back to, and I talk about this in the book, if you think back to interactive whiteboards in the classroom,
yeah,
like interactive whiteboards, all of a sudden were everywhere. And we were told they were going to be the best thing that transformed teaching in the whole entire world. And I would argue that in the vast majority of cases, they're still a projection screen. Like it could just be the way that you project your slides on, how many people actually use the active flips in it? How many people actually use the tools that are built in it? There are people out there, I'm not disputing that, but I'm saying in the vast majority of classrooms, I think you'll find they're just an expensive wall hanging. And that's because
I see what you mean.
And that's because we didn't find a way to make it become the normal way of working and the normal practice. It's about habits and habit formation. And, if you're going to do this EdTech thing, then you've got to have good habits that you're going to continually learn and grow. If you're going to do this AI thing, you're going to have good habits and find a way for it to have meaning for your practice. And we're not there yet. So it has legs, but we haven't found what we're going to use it for yet. And we haven't found how best to support our students to use it properly as well.
Absolutely. No, so it's sort of essentially getting the merging it into the way that things have been for quite a long time and making it, sort of seamlessly engage and interact. And yeah, I completely understand. It's not quite there yet in regards to that. And obviously there's a massive thing with, there's a big split. I feel from what I can see, I don't know how things look to you, but it seems like there's a massive split and a massive divide of one group, or it might be a bit more, I'm giving it very black and white here, but one group that are almost a bit against it, or it seems like things are changing. It's obviously because it's obviously come around really fast, hasn't it? The boom, essentially. Obviously I know it's been around a while, but the boom of it is that really only happened since like ChatGPT in the last 6 months.
Yeah, since November, and I think there's always going to be people who are resistant to change. That's always going to happen. But because there's not that, this is what it's going to be good for yet, and that's because it's still so new. So it's like a chicken and the egg situation. Like we can't get people more on board until we find what it's going to be really good for. Well,
absolutely.
if we can't find what it's really going to be good for, we need to be playing with it and exploring with it. I've seen some really lovely examples, and one of my favorites was something by my friend Darren White, and he trained ChatGPT. It was built in ChatGPT, it wasn't bad. He trained it to be a personal tutor for maths.
Okay.
And if you give it enough prompts and you just put the date in, it would generate a full tutorial of information and examples and questions. And when you think then, well, hang on a minute, every kid could then have a private tutor that's going to give them personalised learning every day. That's amazing. That's when we're finding the magic for it. But what we're not there yet and also we've got permission issues. You've got to be over 18 to use it. So we can model it to students, but we can't give it to students. And so until that is addressed as well, it's not going to come fully into the classrooms. But I think it's so powerful. I used it this morning.
Yeah. It is unbelievable, and it just seems to be from the 3.5 GPT 3.5 to just the 4, and now they've got all the plugins, and now they've got the browsing on it and everything like that. And obviously, Google's bringing out, Google's now climbing up alongside it. It's got Bard, and now it's got Gemini coming out and everything like that. It seems to just be a big boom, really.
But what I would say as well is that, like you said, it's been around for ages, and it sometimes baffles me that people are a bit like, oh, what's this scary new thing? And I get it's scary and new, but what did you think was powering the spell checker when you were writing that document?
Of course, yeah, absolutely. It's Siri. How long's Siri been around? I think people have a very much a sort of dramatized view, and it tends to be in the form of robots taking over the world.
Who delivers your co-op shopping? In all seriousness, if you live in a metropolitan area, a robot will deliver that shopping for you. Just because you don't live in that area doesn't mean it's not being around and being successful. And you look at, I was parked next to a Tesla the other day. I don't own one, that's why I was parked next to it. And there was a dog in the car, and my thing is always, oh my God, someone's left the dog in the car and it's really warm at the minute. And there's a little screen on the Tesla that says, don't worry, the owner knows that I'm in the car. The Tesla has this under control.
It's unbelievable, isn't it?
It is new and it is exciting, but there's so much good stuff in it. But we have had a lot of this around for a really long time. We just I can't say her name because she'll awaken herself, but she does my shopping list for me every week, and I say add milk, and she adds milk. And that's my normal way. Just because it's not your normal way doesn't mean that it's not been around and been in people's lives to that level and to that degree. But even when I go in my Les Mills workout, I'm not talking to a real person, am I? They're not saying push harder. They're not saying you can do 50 more reps on this. That's not a real person stood the other side of that screen. There's some machine learning that's happening there that's adapting to my profile. And, and so there are elements of it that we need to draw out more of these. I think we need to draw out more of these to familiarize people with it and not isolate it as ChatGPT, because that is a brand and that is one aspect. And like you said, there's Google and there's lots of other things happening. But the more we frame it around ChatGPT, we isolate it as a secondary and a binary thing that's not for everybody, and it's not included in everybody's vernacular.
Yeah, I think it just sort of, sorry to backtrack, when you were talking about, for example, when you're doing your Les Mills workout and you've got somebody on the other side, I think that motivational, me and Steve, I don't know if you've listened to any of the podcasts previously, but me and Steve, we've spoken about this, him more than me. He's a bit more knowledgeable about it all than I am, just in regards to the technical side of things. But just I think that whole concept of the motivation, that is something that might be lacking. That's something that's, in regards to the teaching, it's going to be that's just the next step. I'm not saying, we're not saying, for example, it might never happen, but the step between what it is now and someone being equal to someone being in front of you, giving that just that, in front of your face motivation, it seems to be, that might be where the the jump sort of,
and that's where the fear comes in, like the robot's going to take over. And I write about this in the book as well. And teachers have the magic sprinkles. There is nothing that you can't learn on YouTube. Fact. If you're studying GCSE maths, you could sit and teach yourself it on YouTube. I'm a maths teacher. In a really harsh sense, yes, you could. It'd be incredibly challenging, but the content is out there. But if you wind it back a bit, you don't need to be scared of YouTube. You don't need to be scared that they're going to learn something wrong on YouTube. Because if you wind it back when I was little and it was Encyclopedia Britannica or the library, I could have taught myself all sorts of things then. It's just I had to leave my house to go do it. I had to go to the library to get the books, in the analog olden days. I'm that old. But my teachers weren't scared about me going to the library. No. At no point did my teachers go, you need to stop going to the library and reading them books. It won't do you any good. So why do we go, you need to stop watching videos on YouTube, it won't do you any good, when actually there's so much good stuff in there and then there's this fear that if they can learn it on YouTube, why am I needed as a teacher? And I think I wrote about this in another book, not my book, in another book called Great FE Teaching. And it's about how if you can embrace YouTube, and the way I talk about it was in my classroom was that they would go away and learn themselves and then come back with questions. Because what am I there to do? I'm there to help them build the connections between the learning. And I call it adding the magic sprinkles. It's that relationship. It's that knowing where they've come from and where they're going, knowing how to adjust that path, knowing how to support them to get the most out of the material. The actual content part, it could be written on a piece of paper and pinned to the wall their whole entire life. The teaching part is the magic of it. And so we can go from libraries to YouTube and now to AI. It's not that much of a leap if you think about it in that sort of sense. It's not to be fearful for us as educators that there's no role for us in that. The role for us in that is helping them build connections between knowledge, helping them structure their learning paths, helping them readjust and focus, and helping them plan where they're going next, providing that encouragement. That role won't change. That will always, I might date myself massively, but I think that will always have to be human. I certainly would want it to be human for my kids as well. I would always want them to have a really passionate educator for them. But, the fear of robots taking over, robots didn't take over when we started getting encyclopedias. Robots didn't take over when we started learning everything on YouTube. It's not. I think it's something that we can reframe and we can get hold of and think, no, I have a role to play here, and it's a really important role, and this is what I'm here to do.
So it just to sort of carry along with that, in regards to for example, in higher education, obviously there's been certain cases and tutors and professors who have taken the things that they believe might be written by AI and popping them into, funnily enough, like in what feels quite, it's a little bit ironic in a way, putting it back in to see if it's been made by that. I mean, there's lots of proof out there to say that it's not really accurate in doing that, and it's just a bit of disruption, isn't it? And it seems to be that's where the disruption comes from seems to be at the moment, from that sort of divide of people not allowing it to be in, and then some just sort of accepting it and taking it on. But what do you believe it should be something that we should take on, or is it I know it's a bit of a black and white question, it's not quite as easy as that, but
no, I think we should. There are elements that we can embrace. For me, one of the earliest things that I saw was an AI tool that would plan lessons based on the topic that was happening. We have a massive recruitment crisis in education. I mean, it's huge recruitment crisis. And we have a lot of need for ad hoc cover lessons to be delivered by non-specialists. They might be employed as cover supervisors, they might be exam staff, it might be anyone we can get hold of depending on our situation in our college or school. If we could use AI to create a really well-planned lesson that had videos, it had resources, it had tasks, it had a quiz we could run, I mean, There's a massive,
Yeah.
that's solving a real problem that teachers are having and that teachers are facing. I was once the person who had to organise cover in a school, and I didn't last very long because the stress was unbearable. Because you want the best for the kids and you want them to have the best lessons, but you've not got a teacher to put in there, and you're like, I'm going to have to use the science lab technician and it's not going to work, and it's that. So there are elements of AI that we can take forward when we apply it and find its use. What we shouldn't be doing is putting students' work into plagiarism checkers and checking if AI has written it. If we're prepared, the whole point of education is to prepare them for the real world. In the real world, is someone going to come to you and go, did you write that yourself?
Yeah. Yeah.
So fundamentally, that question is flawed, but also the question of the assessment being essay-based is actually possibly worth rethinking. It's one of the things that really gets me, and my eyes have been open since coming to Text Help in inclusive education, and I thought I had it in my toolbox, to be honest, from my years in the classroom, but actually I've learned a lot more since coming out of it and learning from different people. But we don't do very well at including everyone. We really don't.
Absolutely.
We have an exam system that spits you out at 16, and fingers crossed you've got 5 GCSEs, 2 of which need to be in maths and English, and they have to be grade 4 and above. We won't accept anything else. And that can't be the outcome. And the same with universities. We want you to write a really long essay about everything you've learned, citing and referencing other people's work correctly, and then forming your own opinion on it. But we will only accept it if you can sit and write 10,000 words.
Yeah, it is flawed. It is something that it seems like it seems quite outdated now, doesn't it? Especially when you put it quite black and white like that and lay the cards out on the table, it's not the times that we live in, really.
It's not. And if you were coming for a job with me, I'm not sure I want to read a CV. I've got to be honest. I'd possibly love a video of you telling me why you want to come work for me.
Yeah.
In which case, I need you to learn how to make a video. In which case, I need you to learn how to trim your content down to a really short pitch. In which case, I really need you to learn presentation skills. I need you to know how to research my company and curate that information. I need you to be creative in how you're going to tackle that task. And we talk about these 21st century skills and critical thinking, creativity, communication, collaboration, and you can expand them wider than that, but those are the core ones. That's the 21st century. Like, that already feels old. Like, I was listening to someone this week talking about 23rd century skills and what that's going to look like. And we still have an exam system and an assessment system in higher education that it is so linear and so binary. Like, why can't you leave university with a portfolio of work that you've done?
Right.
Why can't you? Where you can evidence that you've read this paper, you understood what this theory was, you applied it in this context, and actually you'd really love to research this a bit more. Surely that's more about the evidence of learning, and then that would be inclusive for everyone, because not everyone can sit and write 10,000 words, which is why they'll go use AI, because it's not a skill that's natural to them. If you think about our dyslexics, if you think about our people with ADHD, a whole host of neurodiversity challenges that as well, we're only just sort of scratching the surface in our awareness of neurodiversity as a whole.
That's a very good point. Yeah, that is. So
how does that play into this? Like, once we understand more about neurodiversity, is that going to change how we view assessments? If you think, when people say neurodiversity, I think there's an assumption that dyslexia is like the first thing that comes up in people's minds, but as a maths teacher, dyscalculia, it is equally as prevalent, but the research isn't there. So dyscalculia, the research into dyscalculia is 30 years behind the research into dyslexia.
Wow, that's an unbelievable statistic, one that I wasn't aware of myself, but that, it's very, very, very interesting when you're
and then you've got ADHD, then you've got autism, then you've got Tourette's, and you've got all these other aspects of learning challenges that we've just not got to grips with yet anyway. But yet we're still stuck in this. You will sit your GCSEs and then you will go to university if you're successful, and you will study this and you'll write a big essay. And we've just launched an A-level, recently, called the EPQ. which is a 5,000 word personal statement. Well, when I was 18, I'm not sure what 5,000 words about me would say. You know, I could present myself.
Yeah.
And I was quite into the arts when I was doing my A-levels. I've got an A-level in theatre studies. So could I have done a performance for you? Would that be worth the same? But it's not. We're asking for an essay.
Not, and it should be that way. It really should. It's almost surprising that, because when I was at school, that, you know, it was sort of even less than it is now, and it seems like it is sort of getting more towards, you know, more diverse in that sense, but it's still way, it's still way behind where it should be, especially for this, you know, the times that we're living in. It's just.
So if we think about it then, and if we then think, what can we use AI for? Well, for me, one of the biggest challenges we need solving is creating a more equitable education system. So could we then create AI to help those students who are a little bit different or need a little bit of different help? And could the teacher submit the lesson to the AI, and the AI goes, you've got Harry in your lesson, don't worry, let me adapt this, and this is how Harry prefers to learn. And you might want to think, in the end of the 6-week assessment, Harry's going to need to be able to have the assessment this way around, don't forget, and on Tuesdays he's got cricket and he's going to miss the lesson.
Yeah,
that's when we're going to find the use for AI.
We're currently working, so we've brought out recently My School AI, something that's very similar to a personal tutor. You know, it is a personal tutor. Yeah. I'm not going to talk about it too much, just in regards to it's not quite out yet, and also I might end up butchering it as well. So
they should check the notes. Check the notes when the episode's out.
Absolutely, I want it to, when I speak about it, I want to do it some justice. So I'll. It's a brilliant idea, and it'll be interesting to see what sort of happens with it.
But that's the thing, like the use cases of AI is for people to spend time and develop these use cases and bring them to market and to test them, and it's not for teachers to work that bit out. What teachers need is a solution to a challenge, and to be willing to express change and to try change and to try different things, and then we'll see the real measure of where this can go.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I don't want to keep you too long, so I'll just ask you a couple more things, if you're all right. You okay for time?
Yeah.
All right? Yeah, brilliant. So just in regards to, from what you know about AI, and obviously the vast amount of knowledge you've got with educating and teaching, for the listeners out there that are, for the teachers that are listening who perhaps aren't massively to grips with AI, it's something that's quite unfamiliar to them, what advice would you give them?
I think you've got to try it and find a way. I can give you a really good example. Actually, yesterday I went for lunch with a friend, and she sat there moaning about another one of our friends, because all she flipping goes on about is AI. And she's like, she's like, I'm just a teacher. I don't need to know anything about this. I just need them to do their exams. And I was like, oh yeah, okay, fine, fair enough, And I was just like, well, And then she said, and the other thing I've got to do is I've got to write 2 job descriptions and get an advert out, and then write some interview questions for this cover supervisor I'm recruiting for tomorrow. And I went, and have you asked AI? And she went, what? And so we did it there and then, and we got a laptop out there and then, and we tested it, and she went, well, that's perfect. That's exactly what I needed. And she's like, how did you get it to make that? And I went, well, I prompted it. I gave it a role. I told it what I was looking for and how it could help me. And then I asked it, I said, you have a go. And so she had a go, and she was like, this is groundbreaking. She's like, this is what I need, but I wouldn't have got there without you helping me get there, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
that's not to say that I'm special in any way, but she had to have a need. Up until that point, she had no need to enter into the world of AI. It was an annoyance. It was a frustration in the staff room. It was a topic of conversation she didn't want to engage in. Yeah. But once she got to a need that AI could solve, all over it. She's messaged me 3 times today already going, I've now written what's going to be the welcome assembly for when they come back after the summer holidays, just so it was done. She's going to be 2 days. She's 2 days late back into term because she comes back off a holiday late. So her need was to be able to do that. So for teachers who are scared about AI, ring me. No, I'm not going to say that. But you've got to find a need, and you've got to find a way to solve a challenge. It's not going to be useful for you just to go in and go hello, because it's going to write hello back.
Yes, you've got to know what to ask it. You've got to know what, it is about, creating those prompts. Obviously, it's that's the main thing. But I think I think if people get educated on it, well, then it can be it's fantastic. But it also gets a lot of things wrong when you don't use it correctly, and that's where the danger comes in. That's where the false information is going to come from, and that's where it becomes dangerous, essentially, isn't it? And
but also it's dated. Like, the data that's in it isn't the most current data that we have. Like, there is a cut-off date of when that data goes in, and we won't go into the ifs, whys and wheres on that now, but the way it's built as well, it has biases built in it because of the way it was built. It is biased towards a certain look and feel of a human being that might not reflect what society reflects. But saying all that, for all its faults, if you are stuck with a question or a challenge and you don't know the answer, it's a really good place to go ask and get some information, and just say, point me in the direction of, or imagine you're a teacher teaching year 11 quadratic equations, and you've got a student who's completed the syllabus and they've done this and this. What would you give them next as a challenge? Ask them something that you might know what the answer would be, and see how it compares and works. And if it's not, adjust the prompt. And you can tell it about a tone of voice as well. I don't think people realize that as well. So you can say, I would like you to have the tone of voice of a friendly primary school teacher, and ask for things to be toned down. And it made quite a few mistakes for me last week writing some content, and I had to keep saying, I would like this in shorter, please. I asked for 150 words, and it's telling me all this amazing stuff. So it's got that human element that'll just keep waffling on.
Yeah.
They'd be like, no, I asked for it in 150 words. I asked for it to be shorter. But the biggest thing for me is, and I wrote about this in Dan Fitzpatrick's book, The AI Educator, as well, is that if you know you have a bias, if you know you often forget about an aspect or an element of society when you're creating content, or when you're writing questions, or when you're thinking about things, say you're delivering a presentation and you've only presented it to white males, IT managers. If you know that, you can say to AI, I have a bias towards this. Can you specifically look through this presentation and tell me where I am expressing this bias and what I can do about it? Because AI will tell it to you straight. A human will go, oh, that was a really good presentation. I really loved it. Where I maybe would have said that a bit differently, but I really love that presentation.
There's none of the social awkwardness, is there?
Exactly. AI will go, you know what you said about being really preferential to only speaking to white male IT managers? You need to include more females in this aspect here. And actually, you could find a stat that would support that here. It will tell it to you straight. So use it as a self-regulation tool as well sometimes. I think that's a really important thing, to self-check your work and just make sure you are being the most inclusive you can be, and go, hey, I know nothing about neurodiversity. Can you check this lesson plan that I've covered all bases? Imagine if I had a student who was neurodivergent. It will tell you.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I've never heard that sort of take on it before. It's very interesting. Well, thank you very much for sitting with me and having a conversation. I really appreciate it. We'll wrap it up there. We'll do it again sometime if
thanks for having me on.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of YAI, where I was joined by Sammy White. You can follow Sammy on Twitter. Her user is @WhatTheTrigMath. And also from that, you can find the link to her book, A to Z of EdTech, and all the proceeds of that book go to St Leonard's Hospice in York, which is a fantastic cause. So thank you for listening to this week's episode, and we'll see you next time.